Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening from. This is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will talk about the challenges and triumphs of living with NVLD, that is nonverbal learning disability. And we will not only be talking about the challenges that I have personally, Jennifer Lynn Purcell, but also the challenges that other NVLDers have in their life with having that learning challenge. And I also like to broaden out to other learning challenges like autism and dyslexia and ADHD and Asperger's to try to be more inclusive and to compare and contrast the challenges that we all experience as neurodivergence. And I also try to include neurotypicals in it as well, as terms of saying that they might experience similar challenges, but to different degrees than neurodivergence do, and to try to say, hey, this is how we can help each other with these challenges. I also wanted to let you know that I started a Patreon account for this podcast to try to get some more revenue from it. That's not the reason why I started this podcast, but I'm trying to get some revenue from the podcast because it will help me keep it going. So if you are willing to donate even $1 or $2 or $5, whatever amount is comfortable for you, to Patreon for Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, that would be appreciated. You can also use Spotify to donate money, and you can also use BetterHelp to donate money with clicking on the link and becoming a customer of BetterHelp. So those are 3 different ways you can support the podcast, and I hope that you will choose which way works for you, and that you will choose which level works for you as well. And I hope that you do it because the podcast helps you also, and that you are willing to support me in continuing to produce it. Thank you. Well, I know I haven't posted in about a week on here, and I've been having a lot of things going on in my life, and I've been trying to manage all of them to the best of my ability. So if you don't see me post for a week, that's probably why. So anyway, today's episode will be about you're more than a label. I want to talk today about being more than the labels we were given, whether that's short, tall, thin, big, smart, stupid, white, black, or brown, LGBTQ plus. Sorry if I forgot one of those letters in there. Neurotypical or neurodiverse. I don't want to minimize these labels if you like them being part of you, but I want to remind you that they aren't the totality of you. I hope that makes sense. Do you ever feel excluded because of the label you were given by a social construct, or by doctors, therapists, professionals, or politicians? I know for me, it's often difficult to think of the qualities that I have that aren't related to NLD or a chronic migraine condition I have. I do know that I am more than these 2 labels, though. In my social life, I'm a podcaster, a minister's daughter, and one of the project social ambassadors for the NVLD project. In the work world, I am an admin, a tech, social media assistant, and freelancer with custom tech services. In my personal life, I am a sister, daughter, mother to Truffles, my dog, and friends to many. But not many know that I am also a sexual abuse survivor, a marathon runner, skier, environmental ambassador. And I also don't mind taking risks and seeing what happens because I've gotten used to doing this over the past 9 years of knowing about my neurodiversity and migraine condition. The first article I want to use for this episode is titled, "What is Neurodiversity and Why Does It Why Does It Matter?" by McKenna Princing, written in September of 2022. Quote, "Neurodivergence is a term used to describe differences in the brain function. Classical definitions of neurodivergence include diagnoses of autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. However, embracing neurodiversity means going beyond medical definitions by recognizing the whole person. Neurodivergence is not the same as disability or mental illness, but it can be associated with them. Accepting human neurodiversity is important so all people can live their best lives. The thing that neurodiversity movement has brought into focus for me is that even if someone is struggling with a challenge that they themselves would like to mitigate, such as uncomfortable levels of anxiety and difficulty focusing, that person should be valued and treated with respect as an autonomous person, not just seen only through the lens of individual pathology," Estes explains. And the social model of disability should be given due weight, so adjustments to the environment can be considered as well as asking the person to change. So, with that article, I definitely think it's bringing up a good point of recognizing what neurodivergence is, not just with the diagnosis, but with how that person um, or individual is going to be living with it, and not just how the individual is going to be living with it, but how everybody else around them who has that knowledge that they're living with it, um, how they respond to and react to that, because that can also impact the individual's life as well, and realizing that they have a piece of themselves that in most cases is invisible and is hard for somebody else to see when it's neurodivergence. And that, I don't know if that could be applied to some of the other labels out there. I don't want to really speak to that because I don't want to put words in somebody else's mouths for their label that I don't have, or I don't really know, haven't experienced. So I can't say what it's like for them to have that or to experience it. So I'll just speak from what I can in terms of being neurodivergent and chronic migraines, and a survivor of sexual abuse. I'm not bringing any of these things up to be triggers for somebody else, but they are things for me that I will always have and will always be a part of me to a certain extent, of how much power they have behind them and how much I let them, I guess you could say, overtake my life in terms of letting it exhaust or trigger me in some way, with whether it being NLD or the chronic migraines or the sexual abuse piece. They're all going to have an effect on my life to some certain extent, and that extent is within my control. And sometimes it's not. because I believe that you can work hard to 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 try to control the extent or power that something existential has on you only so much, and that sometimes you just gotta let it have an effect on you and breathe through it and work through it. And maybe that will be easier than trying to bottle up your emotions around whether it's NLD or a migraine or something triggering for you for a trauma that you had in the past, to just live with it and let yourself experience it rather than trying to bottle up your emotions around it, because sometimes that's more effort than it's worth. Um, and uh, that's connected to some of the labels that I want to bring up today. So, the second article is titled People Are More Than Labels, written by Alan Shellman in February of 2021. The solution, quote, the solution is to follow two simple steps. First, resist the urge to jump to conclusions about people. Realize that people hold far more nuanced views than what their labels suggest. Don't assume you understand a person's um, don't assume you understand a person because he's identified himself in some way. It's not that you can't conclude anything about a person, but it often means that you can learn a lot more about them. Second, take the time to learn and understand people. As we've often talked about here at Stand to Reason, Lieutenant Coleman is your friend. The Coleman tactic is about the art of asking questions in a gracious way. The more you learn about another person, the better you'll understand them, and you'll be less likely to misrepresent them. Plus, taking the time to learn about them also helps you respond in a more relevant way. Francis Schaeffer said, "If I only have if I only have an hour with someone, I will spend the first 55 minutes asking questions and finding out what is troubling their heart and mind. And then the last five, I will share something of the truth." By taking the time to learn about their values and their life, you'll be better equipped to know what to say when and if you decide to say something. When we settle for our understanding of others based on a mere label, we limit our capacity to understand one another and short circuit healthy relationships. That's one reason why the word divergent was better off once they eliminated factions. I think I might have read that sentence wrong. That's one reason why the world and divergent was better off once they eliminated factions. People could be understood for the complicated beings they truly were. We can reap the same benefit in our world if we no longer settle for seeing people as a mere label. So, with that article, I think it was bringing up a book with the title being Divergent, and yeah, it was bringing up a series which I've heard of before. It's basically saying in a world divided by factions based on virtues, Treese learns she's divergent and won't fit in. When she discovers a plot to destroy divergence, Treese and the mysterious four must find out probably what it is. So For myself, I would say that, like I was saying earlier, you, I think labels are important to some extent in terms of that they help us realize the similarities or differences that we might have with somebody else, but they don't give us the totality of that person and a total understanding of what that person goes through, which is, I think, is what this article was trying to um, reference, is that um, you need to be able to learn more about people and learn what's behind their label than just accepting that they have that label and understanding, um, not just understanding what the definition of a label is to somebody who has defined it as, whether that is a professional in that field um, or whatever title you want to give that person. Understand what the label means to the person who has it, because I think that's more powerful and will help you um, have a relationship with that person. The third article is titled "Neurodiversity is Not Enough. We Should Embrace Psychodiversity" by Bonnie Evans. The socialist Judy Singer coined the term neurodiversity in the late 1990s, inspired by other emancipatory social movements based on race and gender. Singer used her standing as an autistic person to rally together neurodivergent people. This was partly a response to what Singer called the social constructivist view of autism, where the condition was seen as having no solid biological basis. This denied the reality of neurological difference, according to Singer. In reply, she offered up neurodiversity in the spirit of biodiversity, in that it's recognized and represent and respected natural variance among humans. Coming across all these descriptions and definitions in the 1990s, Singer was well placed to make her own claims of the development of her own identity. She didn't want to adopt former models of psychological development that pathologized mothers and benign psychological differences. Yet sh- also Yet she also didn't want to adopt the label of impaired. The neurodiversity movement allowed for a new form of identity that was psychologically distinct, but didn't see its members as lacking in some way. There is a different way forward in which we fashion our political advocacy and scientific reasoning not on the brain, but the mind. I call this program psychodiversity. Psychodiversity rejects the claim that mental states can be cleanly and predictably mapped on the brain and onto the brain. Instead, it augments the valuable work of neurodiversity by demonstrating that mental processes and the way we understand them change and evolve through history. And indeed, psychodiversity holds that the mind and human nature are not unitary things, but are profoundly embedded and even constituted by the society and context in which they appear. That isn't to deny the reality of difference, but rather to situate this reality as part of an unfolding social and historical process. Close quote. Um, I want to try to close this episode by briefly describing to you what my labels mean, um, because I feel like that might give you some insight to maybe what your labels mean to yourself, if you don't already know what they mean to you. Um, for me, I'm not going to go over all the labels that I have because there's quite a few that I could think of, but I'll go over the major ones. For the ones that I always knew I had of being a sister and a friend and um, a caring individual and wanting to help in any way that she could, no matter what effort she had to do to uh, be helpful. Um, for me, I love being a sister and a friend to whomever steps into my life, and I feel like I, want to play that role with them, or be that role for them. And excuse me, for me, not only am I a sister to my brother Jonathan, but I feel like I'm a sister to some of the friends that I have, whether that's a female or a male. I feel like I'm close to them in some way that I can be there for them and try to help them go through their life and maybe go through some personal things that they would like to share with me and would like to have some support around. But I also know that I can also just be, well, just isn't the right word. I can also be a close friend to somebody without having to, how do I want to phrase this? Without having to feel completely obligated to know everything about them, because I don't have to know everything about them. You know, I'm comfortable with knowing what they want share and what I think is beneficial. But sometimes knowing everything about somebody um, isn't the best thing. And I mean by that sometimes you may think you know everything about somebody that you've been living with your entire life, and then you realize that that's not true. And I think that's happened with me a lot with my family in terms of realizing I thought I knew who somebody was, and then them not responding in the way that I thought they would um, around certain things that they realized that were happening in the family. And with that, I'm referring to the trauma that that I experienced in my childhood. So, and then with NLD, I think I'm still learning what that means to me. But for myself, I think I do feel like it means that, yes, I have challenges that others may or may not experience. Um, and because I have those challenges and because my brain is built differently than neurotypical, it's my experience of life is different than somebody else's. And that makes it more difficult for me to to learn something that would be more simple for neurotypical to learn, like driving or how to manage a budget or how to cook a meal or how to go about a workday with being um, productive and getting things done and trying to not have it be stressful. So for me, I hope that you that this episode gave you some light into realizing that yes, we do have these labels that we are given by society, whether that's uh, from an academic or professional stance or a social stance, but the labels don't make up completely who we are. Um, it's only one part of us or a part of us. And we are more than the labels because, yes, they are a part of us, but we are the person who lives with them and who is being there for others in the best way that they possibly can, while also trying to go through their own personal things in their lives. So, um, as always, please let me know if you have a topic that you would like me to discuss. I'm willing to look into it and see if I can find some information on it and do an episode on it. And feel free to reach out to me via email if you want to be interviewed or want to bring up something to me. And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/. I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. So I hope that episode was helpful to you and that you were able to get something out of it and it was meaningful for you and that you can share that lesson with somebody else that you know who is neurodivergent or neurotypical and will be able to help you with that challenge that you feel like arises for you, or the lesson that you learned from the episode. And I hope that you take some time to journal about what thoughts or feelings came up for you while you were listening. And I hope that you can spread the word about NLD and being neurodivergent and try to spread the awareness with others as well. Thank you for listening to Living with Invisible Learning Challenge. Talk to you next Friday.